Bhagavat from Sanjarvasi. This is the Rorschach, Georgia update from the 17th of April, 2025. Quick summary of what's going down in Georgia. Kicking things off on Monday the 14th, the ruling party's legal committee backed a new bill that expands the rights of the Constitutional Court to ban political parties, because that's exactly what Georgia needs right now. The Georgian Dream, or Kotsebi, had already granted the court the right to prohibit parties that aim to overthrow the government, attack Georgia's independence, undermine its territorial integrity, promote violence or war, spread hate, or run armed groups. But the new change will make it effectively impossible for the banned parties to reorganize in a new political entity. According to the new bill, if the party has the same goals, members, and policies as an already banned entity, the court can automatically shut it down as well. Step was taken after the United National Movement, or Natsebi, responded to the threats of being banned by the Kotsebi, saying that they would just create a new party. In an interview with Russian TV channel Mir on Friday the 11th, Belarus's dictator Lukashenko said that Ukraine will undergo the same path that Georgia did. He said that Georgia is now exporting lots of products to Belarus and Russia because it could not sell them to either the EU or US, which is of course inaccurate. He added that Georgia even hopes to restore its territorial integrity by having closer ties to Russia. He also said that, like Georgia, Ukraine also tried to become a part of NATO and the EU, but failed, and added that when new, more reasonable people come to power, they will have a better approach to Belarus and Russia and eventually join that union. Like all isolated autocrats, Lukashenko is surrounded by people who constantly flatter and bullshit him, so he may even believe some of these things. It's impossible to know. On that note about Russia, Gennady Gudkov, former Russian MP and Federal Security Service, or FSB lieutenant, now a vocal critic of Putin, said in an interview with Euroscope News on Friday the 11th that Russian FSB agents are permanently stationed in Georgia and collaborate with the government. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Citing Russian oligarchs close to Ivanishvili, he said that Putin allowed Ivanishvili to enter Georgian politics and sell off his Russian assets in exchange for loyalty. Gudkov said that FSB officers enter Georgia with fake documents, rotate in shifts, and maintain control over the political leadership. He warned that Georgia is increasingly following Russia's authoritarian model. While saying that democratic foundations still exist in Georgia, he believes the country is at risk of losing its European future. Recall that Gudkov left Russia in 2019 and was labeled an extremist in 2024 by the Russian government. Also on Friday, Tsulukiani, one of the leaders of the Kotsebi, caused an uproar when she spoke about the national hero of Georgia, Georgi Antchelidze. Antchelidze was a soldier who was captured, tortured, and killed by the South Ossetian separatists during the 2008 Russian-Georgian War and has since become a sign of resistance against the Russian occupation. In an interview with the public broadcaster, Tsulukiani said it would have been better if Antchelidze had stayed home with his children instead of being sacrificed by Misha Saakashvili, former president of Georgia, for his, what she called, PR campaign, implying that Misha started the conflict to retake South Ossetia and raise his political popularity among the voters. Speaking of Tsulukiani, on Monday the 14th, Gogi Gacharia appeared before the Parliamentary Investigative Committee led by Tsulukiani. He spoke about the 2019 protests known as Gavrilov's Night, triggered when Russian MP Sergei Gavrilov was put by the Kotsebi in the Georgian parliament's speaker chair, literally sitting in the speaker's chair itself during an international assembly. The incident sparked public outrage and violent protests. Gacharia said he opposed Gavrilov's entry into the country, but then Parliamentary Speaker Irakli Kobakhidze overruled him. He admitted authorizing water cannons and pepper spray to disperse protesters, but denied approving rubber bullets, which blinded two people. Next up, on Thursday, the 10th NGO Reporters Without Borders published an article on their website saying that the Georgian authorities denied entry to two French journalists, Clément Girondeau and Jérôme Chaubeau, who had been covering pro-European protests against Kotsebi's decision to suspend EU extension talks until 2028. Chaubeau, who was returning to Tbilisi in late March after covering the protests for 2 months, was detained at the airport for several hours, denied access to his phone and luggage, told to pay 2 unexplained fines in cash, and deported without an official notice. Girondeau, who has worked in Georgia for over 10 years, reporting for publications such as Le Monde, was blocked from entering in February. Reporters Without Borders called these actions intimidation and urged France and EU to pressure Georgia's government. Read the full article. Check out the link in the show notes. In other news, on Thursday the 10th, the UK imposed sanctions on 4 senior officials from the Ministry of Internal Affairs responsible for violating human rights during the crackdown on pro-European protesters. Sanctions include a visa ban, an asset freeze, and director disqualification. This means that as of now, they cannot enter the UK, access, or profit from any property or assets they have there. Also, people are not allowed to give them funds or resources directly or indirectly to help them bypass the sanctions. The director ban means that they cannot hold executive roles in UK companies or foreign companies with strong UK ties, like those operating or owning assets in the country. Last week, 3 German parties signed a document to form a governing coalition. Peter Fischer, German ambassador to Georgia, has shared a part of the document on Twitter, which says that Georgia can only continue its integration into the EU once the doubts about the country's commitment to democratic processes are resolved. Meanwhile, the coalition will continue to support pro-European forces in Georgia. On Wednesday, the 16th, Alexandre Tsulukiani, the Minister of Education, outlined a new education plan that sets priorities for the coming years. Alongside the stated and official goals like modernizing the school system, developing practical skills for the global market, and improving teaching quality, Tsulukiani spoke about the plan to introduce Chinese as a secondary language in schools. While the plan remains in its early stages, shows Georgia's interest in strengthening ties with China as relations with the EU continue to worsen, especially after the 2024 parliamentary elections and the government's human rights violations against pro-European protesters. We've said many times before, the Kotsevi's goal in turning over Georgia to Russia as its colony will be to turn Georgia into a sanction-busting transshipment conduit for Russian and Chinese goods to and from Europe. Wednesday, the 16th, the Tbilisi City Court approved prosecutors' request to replace Afghan Sadigov's extradition detention with bail. He left custody the same day. Sadigov, an Azerbaijani journalist who's critical of Aliyev's regime, fled his country to avoid prosecution. Georgian authorities detained him in Tbilisi last year, planned to extradite him to Azerbaijan. However, the European Court of Human Rights intervened and blocked the extradition until it could make a final ruling on the case, which can take years. Georgian law limits extradition detention to 9 months, which would have expired in early May, so prosecutors had no choice but to ask the courts to replace the detention with bail, which was set at 5,000 lari, which is about $1,800 US. EU plans to adopt new legislation that will make it easier to suspend the overall visa-free travel agreement with 61 different countries, which includes Georgia. They aim to reach an agreement on the law by the end of the year. The new rules will allow the EU to halt visa-free travel based on political relations, human rights violations, breaches of international law, and failure to follow international court rulings. Given the strained relationship between the EU and Georgia, along with calls from some members of the European Parliament to suspend visa-free travel with Georgia over human rights violations, this could pose a serious risk to the Kotsevi. Visa-free travel is seen as one of their major political achievements. Losing it would likely cause significant backlash even among their strongest supporters. Finally, in an interview with Business Press News statistician Soso Archvadze, estimated that traffic congestion in Tbilisi cost the economy over $1 billion lari annually, more than $360 million US. He said that each driver loses about 120 hours per year due to persistent traffic problems. The number of drivers in the city, this adds up to 66 million lost hours. Despite this, the number of cars in Tbilisi keeps rising, with 230,000 new vehicles registered in the past 5 years. And that's it for this week. Do you know that Rorschach Georgia Update is just one of many? We've got country updates and non-country updates, including the Arctic, about the area north of the Arctic Circle, the multilateral update about the world's major multilateral institutions, and the ocean update about the 70% of the world covered in salt water. Check out the full list. Follow the link in the show notes. Nachmandis.